This is the podcast that we ask our guests from in front and behind the camera, how did they get their foot in the door? What was the key to unlocking their success? What's their story?
Our first guest hit our screens at the young age of 14 with the role of Effy in Skins. Since then, she's gone on to be in the Maze Runner Trilogy, Pirates of the Caribbean, and Netflix big hit, The Gentleman. Our second guest has been directing and writing since the beginning, but you'll perhaps know him best for his roles in The Lost Boys and being part of the iconic duo Bill and Ted. Our guests today are actress Kaya Scodelario and actor-director Alex Winter.
I'd love to ask, if I may, what was the first stepping stone for you realizing that you wanted to be an actress?
I always, as a kid, loved movies. I loved stories. I loved not being me, which I think a lot of, young kids feel. And I went to Catholic school, went to Catholic primary school. And in year 6, we had a teacher come in for the day to do some drama with us. And she said, okay, we're going to do a hot seating challenge. And one of you is going to sit there and say why you think religion is a great thing. And then someone else is going to say why they think religion isn't a good thing. And obviously, being a bunch of kids in Catholic school, everyone's like, well, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
And I kind of had this instinct to put my hand up to perform. And I'd never had that in school before. I never put my hand up. I was very shy. I was very quiet. And for some reason I did. And I don't remember what I said at all, but I remember the feeling right afterwards when I sat back down on the carpet, like old school, when you used to get carpet burns from sitting cross-legged on that primary school carpet. And I remember just this exhilaration of performing and how wonderful it felt to step into someone else's shoes and try to understand their points, and to know that in the world we're all different and we think differently. And then we had a year 6 production, like our Leavers production, that was Oliver Twist, and they didn't let any of the girls audition. All the girls were sent to the back of the room to do drawing while the boys got to audition for Oliver. And we were given a line to say as one of the orphan kids. And I said my little line with gusto in the first rehearsals, and they asked if I wanted to be Oliver, and I ended up playing Oliver. And
Wow.
from that point on, I just kind of knew it was the thing I wanted to do, and it was the thing that made me happy. And then I got really lucky. Skins was an open audition. I didn't ever have an expectation that I would be able to afford to go to drama school or anything like that. I kind of had laid to rest the fact that it probably wasn't going to happen to me, but it didn't happen to people like me. Skins came along, and from then on, I just gave it my all. I've been so grateful that those doors opened to me at that time, that all I've ever wanted to do is keep that door open. So I will work my ass off. I'll be incredibly professional. I'll do 16 hours a day. I won't complain. I'll push my body and my mental health to the limit, because I'm really lucky to do a job I love.
I love that passion. Fair play. And it's so good to see that you're doing it and achieving it. I'm an actor myself, so getting to chat to people like you, I'm like, it's inspiring. And to see going from Skins, being so young in that, and all the way up to you did obviously Pirates, Maze Run, and then The Gentleman, all that journey that you've done there. Is it crazy to kind of look back and think about where it began, what you've just spoken of there? Like,
yeah, no, definitely. I still 100% have imposter syndrome. I'm waiting any day for someone to kind of bring out the stick and wring me in by the neck and pull me off stage. Yeah, it is mind-blowing. And a lot of it is just luck. A lot of it is not being competitive. There's a wonderful thing on Skins: when we all got that job, we supported each other, we loved each other, and we didn't consider ourselves as actors. We just felt really lucky to be there. And then when we kind of went out into the world and we're auditioning and we're fighting for roles, we did it with passion for the job, not to be famous or any of those things. It was more that we wanted to continue getting to do our craft and enjoy it. But it is bizarre, and I am really grateful for the journey. The fact that I'm able to make a career out of it and that it can be my full-time job is amazing, because there's only ever 1% of actors that are ever actually working. It is a really unstable job. I'm sure you know. I mean, I remember trying to get a phone contract and I had no credit, and they were like, no. What should we get unemployed? I'm not unemployed, no, you're unemployed. So you have to kind of have the passion for it. You have to have the love and a little bit of luck as well.
Yeah. And do you have advice for any actor going into the industry now? And things have obviously changed. There's a lot of things that have evolved since you started. Like self-tapes is now a much bigger thing, but
Yeah.
getting your foot in the door, and what would you suggest? It's a really hard question, but
It's a really hard question because, it's an interesting industry. It is a business, very much so. I think a lot of times people look at actors' careers and go, God, they must have really planned that out, what film they were going to do when. And the truth is that there is no way to plan your journey, because there are times where you just need employment, and you need to, if you're based in the States, you need healthcare. If you're over here, you need to pay your rent. So you take jobs that necessarily maybe don't mean the most to you. But those are all experiences. I still, I've done I've done music videos, I've done things that back then didn't, agents and stuff didn't think were priorities. But for me, they were all a learning exercise. I think it's really interesting and important that you familiarize yourself with the set, how it works, how the crew works from the bottom right to the top. And to have respect for everyone within that spectrum, because we're all in it together to make something collaboratively. And that is what filmmaking and TV making is. It is a collaboration. So I think if you come in with an ego, if you think it's just about your journey, or if you're competitive, you're not going to get very far, because it is all about those connections and about, carving out a space within a really, really interesting mix, melting pot of different creatives. And just to do it for the love of it. I mean, if you're wanting it for a free smoothie on Instagram, that's not the right thing to be doing. Do you know what I mean? Like, you go be an influencer. That's much easier. If you want to be famous, go do that. A lot of acting isn't being famous. It's being unemployed. It's trying to be creative.
Yeah, wicked. And I mean, we've all been there, but embarrassing moments when it comes to, auditions or anything. Is there any auditions that you'd, care to go back and just sort of tell us about, if there was any that were, I mean, there's always the horrendous ones, but anything that you're willing to actually share?
I've been quite lucky that nothing's been like terrifying. I mean, I will say, I do think that auditioning is its own separate skill.
Yeah.
And I think it's all right to feel like you're not very good at auditioning. And that doesn't mean that you're not a good actor, because the audition room is nothing like what it will be like on the day. There is a reason why, as characters, we have costume and makeup and effects and filters and lighting, because all of that goes into the character. And when you're kind of just doing it in your mum's kitchen, if it feels a bit shit, that's all right, because it can never really be its best version of itself. I'm not particularly good at memorizing lines. I never have been. I'm dyslexic. I don't have a photographic memory. I mean, I had friends that used to be able to get an audition through for 12 pages and do it that night. For me, it takes a week. I need a week with the material. I need to really feel like I know it. And even to this day, auditioning terrifies me. It's not a skill that I feel like I have. So every audition is embarrassing and terrifying.
I'm glad that you said, because dyslexia is such a big thing in this industry. I'm dyslexic. A lot of my friends that are in the industry are, and the learning thing is very difficult. And if you don't have enough time to prepare, it can be really terrifying. Do you have a system, a way of learning lines, or is it literally just read it as many times as you can and just hammer it?
I mean, it's painful. I've tried to kind of do the tricks and stuff that I've read about. None of that really works for me. What was the most useful is I did a play for the first time at the start of the year. And that taught me to recognize the pattern of what I don't remember, if that makes sense.
Right.
So because it had to be word perfect every night, I could figure out what bits would slip away, and I'd be able to associate the moment that was coming up with knowing that something was going to happen, so I can kind of do that a bit easier now. But no, and I think with self-tapes, it's interesting. Here in the UK, you're expected to be off book. In the States, you're not. They're very happy for you to hold the sides and read from the page as you're auditioning. And I think it'd be useful if we had a bit more of that here, to take that pressure away of it being a memory game.
Yeah, 100%.
So that you feel, and look, for some people, maybe they're much more comfortable being completely off book and feeling like they don't have to think about it. But for others, they may not work like that. And so if we didn't have this kind of anticipation or expectation, that the actor needs to be completely off page, because that's all you're fucking thinking about when you're self-taping, is like, do I know the words? Do I know the words? If you're able to read it or use a teleprompter, I think that we can be a little bit more relaxed about what the proper or improper way of auditioning is.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I always feel like sometimes it would be easier to be like, here's the script, get an idea of it, and maybe do a bit of improvisation. I know some actors would the bed if they had to do that. So it's on each person, doesn't it?
And it's about that. It's about exploring what works for that actor. And I think directors should be open to that. And if you want really, if it's important to you that you're not just casting a name, but you actually want the person and how they work, then you should give them the space and the time to explore how they want to work. You know, you should be able to say to the actor, how do you want to do this? How do you want to do the audition? Shouldn't just feel like a cattle call.
Yeah, sometimes it does. Sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah, most of the time.
Bye, Mom. Have a good day. Make good choices.
You have to let them know if you're willing to spill a little blood.
What are we, the League of Shadows? Jesus!
I think I should probably call the police.
Christ.
This was your idea.
I thought it would be cinematic.
This film, you seemingly play quite an ordinary, normal, you know, housewife with kids. It kind of all goes awry as the film progresses. Yeah. What was it about this character and this film that you wanted to do and get involved with?
I really liked that they kept making the worst possible decisions at every turn. And on first read of the script, it absolutely infuriated me. And then I sort of took a step back and put my own ego out of it and thought about it. And the truth is that these aren't super detectives. They are ordinary siblings. And the fact they make these bad decisions, there's something fundamentally human about that and quite real, even though it is in this kind of heightened, ridiculous ride. I really liked that at the beginning, she does seem put together. She does seem as though on the surface, she's achieved what she wants to achieve. Noah comes back and sort of puts a spanner in all that. And then she slowly unravels and has these impulses and does make these mistakes and has to step up and be the parent, but is also clearly in need of someone taking care of her too.
Yeah, it's hilarious, the dynamic between you two. And it is one of those things where it just keeps getting worse. And you think, well, no, now they're going to probably make a right decision or something's going to go right for them. And it just gets worse and worse. And again, don't want to give anything away, but it really does escalate to the point where you're like, what is going on here? But because the character's so believable, as you say, and grounded, you believe it and you're with them until the very end. In terms of, you know, your partner in crime in this, Josh Gad, he's hilarious. And the bouncing off of the two characters is great. Were you two both kind of attached at the same time? Who did you come on first? Like, was that part?
He came on, I think Josh was attached first, and then I had a Zoom with him. And I mean, and I really admire him as an actor. And to be a comedic actor is not an easy thing at all. And it's not something that I went into confidently. I knew it was something I wanted to try to push myself to do. And I'd kind of stepped into it a little bit on Pirates, but that character was very much the straight guy among everyone else being quite big and funny. And same with The Gentleman. And I wanted to test my boundaries of being able to be funny and to bounce off Josh and to see what that would be like. And I was lucky that he really trusted me and we worked well together. We kind of had that chemistry from the very beginning. I would change things up in scenes and he'd be right there with me and he'd do the same to me and it would challenge me and push me. And by the end of it, we were kind of very in sync with each other. We kind of knew how the other one was going to deliver the lines and we could kind of bounce off each other very quickly. And it's always nice to feel safe with your co-star. I mean, it's a really important thing. And on top of that, the fact that he is just like a nice guy meant that we could enjoy it. And we were on this kind of indie set in the middle of nowhere, Canada, no luxuries, just good old-fashioned indie filmmaking. And to have someone like him who's kind of used to being on these massive Disney studio sets to still embrace that and still want to do that for our little film was really special.
Yeah, amazing. And another one is Anthony Carrigan is hilarious. And there's a couple of scenes. There's a scene like where you're all around a table and I'm just thinking, God, there must have been moments when you were filming it where you're thinking, don't crack up, don't laugh. Was there any sort of corpsing on set where you were trying to hold it?
I mean, the first day we shot with Anthony, it was the scene where we're in the car outside the diner and his head sort of appears in the window. And we hadn't seen him get ready in the morning in the makeup truck. And we didn't know he was going to have the braces and the head and all of it. And his little face, when it just appeared, both Josh and I just ourselves and burst out laughing. We were just so impressed with how committed he was immediately. The braces were his idea, like all these kind of little silly character things that he put into him. And my favorite sequence is the bit where we go to Bodhi's house and there's just knives on the wall, and it's kind of really creepy and eerie and gross, but he lets you feel safe enough to also find it funny. I think that's quite interesting about his character. And for us, every day it was just like, I cannot wait to see what he's going to do with this character.
Yeah, some brilliant moments. And I spoke to Alex Winter last week about the movie, obviously, and for me, like, he is an icon of the screen. Like, I don't think of him as a director, but when I did my homework, I was like, he's done loads of directing. He's been around the game for so long. Were you obviously familiar with both ends of his talent, or were you kind of being like, I'm being directed by, and it's such a familiar face, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, you'll know this because you met him. He's actually much more directory vibe than
Yeah, he
what you
is,
expect, right? He's
Yeah.
actually like really intelligent and takes it very seriously. Clearly knows his stuff. And I think that was a bit of a shock. I was kind of half expecting, maybe hoping that he would just be this stoner dude. He's not. He's sober. He's like, he's there to work. And that's great because obviously that is what you want and that's what you need in a director. But fascinating to see that you're right. He can play these kind of iconic goofball characters and also really knows what he's talking about. This was such a passion project for him. It had taken him a few years to get it off the ground. So to be able to be a part of that with him was really special. But yeah, I was unaware of how directory his vibe actually is.
Yeah, I love that. One thing I want to shout out quickly, and I don't know if it's a thing that maybe you're known for more in the States or whatever, but there was a show I watched on Netflix that you did, Spinning Out, which I absolutely loved. And I was hoping for a second season. I was like, come on, guys. But I just wanted to give it a shout out because I don't think it gets enough love. But
that's very kind of you.
Love that show, and you were wicked in it.
I think we should bring in Bodhi.
No, why?
We just scare her.
Family's the most important thing, family and protein.
Alex, how's it going, man? Thanks for taking the time.
Of course. How are you?
I'm good. All the better for seeing your film, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
Really enjoyed it, man. It's a lot of fun. It's one of those movies where you're like, oh my God, what are they going to do next? How are they going to... So first of all, I'd like to ask how this landed on your desk. How did this come about? And what's the story there?
Well, I was looking to make another narrative. It had been a while since I'd made one of my own, and so I do a lot of my own producing, and so I just started putting this together with my producing partner Russell Hollander and Scott Kroof, who actually produced all 3 Bill and Ted movies. And I was looking specifically for a black comedy noir. I love noir; it's my favorite genre. I'm working on another one now to do next, and so I was looking for something very specific, an ensemble-driven black comedy noir, and I looked at scripts, and I found Michael Galvin's script, which I loved, needed a little bit of work in terms of getting it to drive a little closer to the themes I was interested in exploiting. But it's a great script and kind of a perfect ensemble noir. It follows the rules of noir, where things start off not so great and get progressively worse, and no one is really a hero, but they're all human. You can kind of find a way in to like all of them, even though they're all doing horrible things at one stage or another. So it was a ton of work, but I'm really happy with the way it came out, and the reception here in the States has been great, and I'm really happy Signature's releasing it in the UK. I look forward to it being on release there. I think it has a very British sensibility. My sensibility tends to skew that way, given my upbringing, and I think the combination of comedy and horror and darkness and farce are very British. But the cast was a dream. Having Josh and Kaya and Billy and Anthony, they're 4 of my very favorite actors. So having them, in a playground every day was really a dream.
Yeah, I mean, the cast is, it's incredible, as you say. And it is funny, you mentioned that, they do horrendous things in this film, but we still are backing them somehow. And I don't want to give too much away because I think it's one of these films that you want to kind of watch and not know too much. Thankfully, the trailer doesn't give too much away either. So I didn't know how bad it was going to get. And it really does. It escalates without going into too much detail. And it's yeah, the cast is what sells that. It sells the fact that you're still on their side, even though it's getting worse and worse and worse. In terms of getting the cast put together, what was the process? I mean, Josh Gad is hilarious, and Kaya is, you know, British. She's a one of our own. How did that come about, and you know, how did you get it on their desks?
You know, I was working on it, putting the financing together, and then building the cast as I put the financing together. And so Josh was very supportive from the jump and really helped. And I got Billy Lord, who I'd been chasing for ages, and just a huge fan of. Anthony was a close friend from doing Bill and Ted 3, and he's one of my very, very favorite actors alive, right? I just think the guy's a genius. So I was desperate to put him in a film. Look, I've been a fan of Kaya's since she was a kid, and she's just an unbelievably versatile actress who can not only do drama and comedy equally well, but can jump quickly between the two, which I think people are finally getting a sense of with The Gentleman, though I think it's been on display for quite some time. And, you know, the work she did on Skins, which I thought was as funny and witty as it was dark, and also her work in Wuthering Heights, the Andrea Arnold film, which I just love. She's incredible in that film. So the film required the actress to be able to kind of go from what you think is going to be kind of a loopy farce into something quite serious, and have to take, you know, without giving, as you said, giving too much away, having to take kind of full control of the film at a certain point. And I knew that Kaya could do that, and she did. She was amazing. Josh, I've known for a long time, and I know that he's very good at quickly leaping from comedy to drama, which again his character is required to do. So it was, you know, it was a very specific task. I had very specific actors in mind, and there were actors that I thought were great but would not be able to do that. So I feel very grateful that I got them on board.
You've had a long career acting, producing, directing, you know, bit of everything really. And I, you know, being a fan of yours, particularly from your movies, going back and seeing how actually far back you started directing and how far back you started writing, you know, primarily for me, I think of you as an actor. In terms of, you know, so many directing projects, but what is it about directing and, you know, going behind the camera? What is it about that you love and draws you to, you know, get involved that way?
Yeah, it's a funny thing to discuss just because I've always done both since I was very, very young. I started doing both at the same time when I was a little kid. If I'd grown up in this climate, I would have been using an iPhone to make movies. But because I grew up in the 70s, I bought my first 8mm camera mowing lawns when I was 8 years old, and started making films with my that I was acting in with my friends. I was a professional actor by 10, and I was on Broadway all through my teens in 2 very long-running shows where I had a supporting role, singing and dancing in 2 shows. And I was making films then. And then I went to film school. I didn't go to drama school. So I came out of film school and I was making music videos and commercials, and that's when I got Lost Boys and Bill and Ted. So all through those, I was directing all the time. So to me, it's always been, my artistic identity has always been both. They've never been separate. They've always been entwined. And I've just more known for my public-facing work because I'm public-facing, right?
Yeah.
And that's fine. I mean, it's actually, for me, I'm a bit of an introvert, so I've actually liked my ability to kind of get away from the public eye for chunks of time in my life and just be more behind the camera and expressing myself creatively without having to be out in front all the time. So it's a mixed bag, I think, for the public. You know, some people know me for one thing or another. Some people know more about like my doc work or my directing work, or they're fans of that. They certainly know I've done Bill and Ted. Obviously, the greater public knows me mostly from Bill and Ted, which is certainly fine by me. But from my perspective, it's all been one thing.
One thing. And I guess it must be, obviously, this you've directed, and you've got a part in it as well. And that's like a kind of balancing act, being on screen while directing a scene. What is that process like? You know, directing someone, then stepping out as, and then going back in as the character. And how does that work?
Yeah, I did it on Freaked. I mean, I directed that with Tom Stern, my directing partner at the time, which was, you know, very different than directing completely on your own in terms of what you just described. And uh, I don't love it. I gave myself a very small part in Adulthood, and even that I didn't. When I was away, I could feel the crew and the cast sort of like, where are you going? Um, it's because I produce and direct, I'm very hands-on directing, and it's really my set. And so if I bail to like suddenly become someone else, it's like there's a big vacuum that gets left. So I'm not sure I would do it again, but it's an interesting thing, and I certainly take my hat off to the Grand Master Orson Welles, who was the best at it, I think, of anyone in the history of cinema, who could pull that off and create a great performance like Charles Foster Kane and make one of the greatest movies of all time. But it's a strange thing to do, and I find the artistic mindsets to be quite different. I liken it to trying to conduct an orchestra while you're playing lead violin, right? It's like, to me, there's such different mindsets, and I can do both. I can direct a crew and I can immerse myself in a part. But even when we were working on Bill and Ted 3, and they originally were asking very early on, like, do you have any interest in directing it? And I was like, I really don't. Like, I don't want to try to be Bill and run a set. Like,
that's a lot, yeah.
I want to just be Bill, and Bill is like a kid in a playground, and like so much of what makes that character work is he's off in his own world with Ted, and he's not thinking about things in that way. And I find acting to be very immersive in that way. I'm really just a character in the character's world.
Yeah, no, sure. And I mean, the opposite of that, though, like when you've been in movies as an actor, and you've got a director directing you. Is there that, because you're obviously used to the other end of it, directing and writing, producing, is there ever a temptation to be like, oh, can we try that, or like kind of get involved a little bit in terms of
not at all. I heard an interview with an actor recently that kind of bummed me out, where it's an actor that I admire too, where they were talking about how they were working on something and looking at the director and thinking, I could be doing this better than they're doing it, and sort of judging and critiquing them. And I was thinking, I so don't do that. Like I surrender to the director, and if the director is going to falter, that happens sometimes. And sometimes you're directing and your actor falters. And I am not acting thinking, God, I wouldn't have put the light there, or I wouldn't have given that actor that direction like that. I'm in my character's world, and I am seeing the world through that character's eyes. And I'm not sitting there, thinking I could be doing a better job than them, or I should be the director or whatever. And if they falter, then they do. It's kind of like having kids. It's like, I'm a dad. I got 3 boys, and I want them to succeed. I'm there for them. It's been my job to make sure they were clothed and fed and had a roof over their head. But a couple of them just came out of college, and I was thinking, they may do what they majored in. They may do their passion. They may not. They may falter. They may be lost for several years. I don't know. That's their life, right? Like, I'm not a helicopter parent. Like, I'm not like, you must now do this. I could do your life better than you. Or, it's like, I'm the opposite of that. And that's the journey, man, So, that's, for me, the beauty of acting is that I do not have to think that way. I'm just in a world.
I love that. I mean, that feels like the right answer. It's interesting because there is that kind of blurred line, isn't there? And I guess that can be tricky for some people. It just reminds me, I don't know if you've seen Tropic Thunder, but it reminds me of, some of the behind the scenes of, Ben Stiller directing in character and then flicking back and forth.
What? Take it from the top. Yes. Now let's get this clear. I'm gonna ask you one more time. You say it.
I don't love movies about Hollywood. There are very few TV shows or movies about Hollywood that I love because they tend to stress me out because the business is so freaking hard.
Yeah.
I love Tropic Thunder. That's one of the few that I just think, because it is so obscenely over the top and there are no real likable characters. So it's just a hoot. And because it's so over the top, it's actually quite accurate.
Yeah, I love that. In terms of, my podcast is usually about how someone's career begins, and you did mention that you're kind of the first few stepping stones. But in terms of like, what did actually come first? Was it the writing? Was it the directing? Was it the acting? What was the kind of the first moment you realized you wanted to work in film?
Well, it was really, I mean, I started kind of on stage, but my parents were modern dancers, and I was living in St. Louis. We'd moved from London to St. Louis. My mother taught dance at a university. My dad ran a dance company. Um, and my babysitter was the movie theater on the college campus. So I was, rather than just watching like crap TV, which believe me, I watched a lot of crap TV. I was not like some elite artist guy at 6 years old. But I was really immersed in like Chaplin, Keaton, Hitchcock, because that's what that theater was showing. They were showing good stuff. Fred Astaire. I was a song and dance kid. I started dancing very young. I took my mom's classes. I started taking tap and stuff when I was 3, 4, 5, 6 years old. I was on stage by 5, 6, 7 years old. And I was a movie fanatic by that age. I had like pictures up on my walls when I was in elementary school of like Hitchcock and, Chaplin and things like that. So to me, it was kind of all one thing. It was about it was performing and making stuff. It was theater. I would do theater at my elementary school. We would do pretty ambitious productions, and I would make films. So it was all one thing. And I was too young to understand they were supposed to be separate. And I got old enough to realize that and just said, I have no interest in separating them. So they've always been kind of one holistic thing to me. I kind of did all of it at once.
Mm-hmm. It's amazing that because your career's had such longevity, and the fact that you can act and then you can be like, well, actually, I'm going to write something and then I might act in it, I might direct it. It's kind of fun that you get to play with all those different toys. But was it always something that you wanted to do? Was there ever like, oh, I might become a farmer, or was there ever another route?
That's a good question. I wasn't sure, once I got into high school and I sort of like the innocence of my youth gave way to the pragmatism of young adulthood and going, oh, I'm supposed to choose a thing, right? Like, and I was like, maybe I'll be an editor, maybe I'll be a cinematographer. And I was on Broadway acting at the time. It never occurred to me to like make acting a career. And in terms of training, right? In terms of going to college. I mean, I knew I wanted to keep acting, but I was supposed to like shoot. And then I got to film school after coming out of the show. I was like, nah, that makes no sense. I don't have to choose anything. And I was acting all through film school because I was paying my way through school. So I was doing commercials and voiceover work. And I booked Lost Boys while I was a junior at NYU. I dropped out of NYU to go make Lost Boys. So the acting never stopped. So I think it was, I never really took hold of the lesson in a way that I've, as a responsible adult, try to impart to my kids, which is like, figure something out that'll keep a roof over your head. Mm-hmm. I just always sort of throw myself off the high dive and then climb up the ladder and throw myself off the high dive again. And at 60, I'm still doing that. So it never sunk in.
Mate, you look great for 60. That blows my mind. When you referenced the 70s, I was like, hang on a minute, how?
Yeah.
No, you look great, man. You're doing what you're doing. It's working for you.
Thank you.
In terms of, that you mentioned before that you are quite introverted, and like, doing the directing, the writing can be a nice break from, being on screen and everything else. What happens when a moment like Lost Boys or Bill and Ted come along and suddenly you're like sprung into the light? Was that pretty wild?
Yeah, it's like, I'm grateful for it. It doesn't make me miserable. Obviously, I could walk onto a stage in front of 1,000 people. I don't have a problem with that. However, I need a break. Like, it will eventually, I think most people who are not extroverts are like this. Like, it will overtake you emotionally and like neurologically at a certain point. And I'll just be like, it's not a shocker to me now at this point in my life that my public life happens in kind of spurts. Like I'll have the big one, Bill and Ted, then there'll be another one, and then like 5 years goes by and maybe another one. Bill and Ted 3 came out in 2020, and my doc Zappa came out, and I made like 2 docs that came out that year, and Showbiz Kids and Bill and Ted, like all this press, all this stuff. And then I was in hibernation until this year. Like I was just like in complete like, get away from me, everybody. And then this year has been insane because Adulthood came out and the play has gotten a ton of press. And I'm joyful. Like, I'm so grateful for it. And It's not like I'm like kicking and screaming, or I mean that would be not true. It's just it's an odd thing. I just when this is over, I'm going to go home and I'll need a I'll need a break. You know?
Yeah, no, fair enough. I mean, so as you say, some people have that. Sometimes it brings people up, and then in other people, it kind of it's a drain. You need energy, and it sucks that out of you. So
And it can be both of those things, right? Like I had a crazy September because my play opened on Broadway and my movie premiered at the Toronto Film Festival at a theater that seated 2,000 people, and the whole cast flew out. And best movie premiere I've ever had, this Adulthood premiere. It was amazing. The audience was so with the movie and engaged. And look, that was a high. That was, I was very grateful for that, week of insanity, and very happy when it was over.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. Well, not to stray too far from adulthood, I really enjoyed it, man. I want to ask that, every time that you and Keanu Reeves are on screen, it's dynamite, and we love that. And you obviously did a show together. Are there any more plans to reunite and do something else?
You never know. You never know. If we'll do the play again somewhere else, that's a possibility, probably, because it's done quite well here, thankfully. You never know with Bill and Ted what happens. We don't have a fourth going at the moment, but that could always happen at some point. You never know. We love working together. We genuinely do. We're like bandmates. We both play bass, which is hilarious and nerdy. So we are kind of like a rhythm section a little bit, and that's kind of what we are in this play. We're sort of the rhythm section of this play. It's a 4-man play, really. So we have a groove, and we just do. And I'm grateful for that. It's really nice to act with someone that you just kind of fall in line and click with in that way. So we'll definitely want to do something together down the road.
Man, I was so excited when I saw Bill and Ted 3 was coming out. I was like, they're doing it. They're doing it up I don't know how many years. It must have been 30 plus years.
27. Well, you may be right. It may be over 30. I'm terrible with dates, so do not listen to me. I'm the worst.
That was a guess. So
yeah,
it's always a joy to see you guys back together. Do you have a moment, an audition moment, maybe a on-set moment, something you're willing to share with us that maybe few people know?
I don't know. I mean, it's every audition has been bananas, and the Bill and Ted audition process, which I have spoken about before, was really crazy because they were so young, and the directors and the writers and everyone involved, and they just auditioned and auditioned and auditioned, and it was it was a lovely audition process. I understood that they were very concerned with finding the right guys and the chemistry and all of that, but it was brutal because they just would not make up their minds, and they paired me and Keanu with so many different people, and it went on for months, it felt like. And the very last day of the Bill and Ted auditions, they brought everyone together in one audition space, which is really not done usually, and they just had us read with all these different people, and as they knew they didn't want certain people, they would let them go home, which is just crazy brutal, right? Yeah, it's like
probably done differently these days, but back in
it was done differently. It was not done like that then either, just for the record. That was bananas. It was like being like, I don't know if you've ever seen the Jane Fonda movie, They Shoot Horses, Don't They? About the marathons during the Depression, where people would dance until they literally died to try to earn enough money to eat. And it was just brutal, but hilarious at the same time. But I mean, auditions are always strange and interesting and can be lovely, and you can audition for stuff you don't get that are still kind of fun, lovely experiences where you meet people and maybe you work together down the road or whatever. So it's a chance to perform.
Yeah, no, 100. It's a bit of practice, and in terms of when you were growing up, movies and influences, movies that really influenced you, things that kind of got your juices flowing.
I mean, for me, when I was little, I was really into older cinema. So I was really into Hitchcock, especially the British period of Hitchcock, which is still my favorite period of his. And, The Lady Vanishes, 39 Steps, things like that. Things like that kind of got me into cinema. And then I got older, and things like Fritz Lang and noir and obviously modern cinema. I was really into, David Lynch and there's a ton of modern masters. It would take me the entire, talk to go through them all. But when I was young, I'd say the old classics that involved dance and comedy and suspense, but done in a very kind of formal way, is really my favorite type of cinema to this day. And my films have a kind of formalism to them. I know they do. I storyboard a lot. They have a kind of clockwork, mechanistic vibe going on. And those are the kind of movies I like. I mean, I could watch M any day of the week. It's one of the greatest films ever made, and it's a masterpiece of construction as well as acting. And the same could be said for Hitchcock and Chaplin.
Well, yeah, no, it doesn't get any better than that, does it? And
yeah,
if you were going to give advice, to all these people that are out there, maybe listening to this, people that want to get their foot in the door with directing or writing or acting, is there a piece of advice that you would give?
I mean, make stuff, and in this age of technology, I know that still requires some privilege. I'm aware it does. You have to have a laptop or a phone, and these things cost money, and you can't just pull them out of your backside. But it is easier to make things now. It is substantially less expensive to make things now than it used to be. Write and make stuff. And if you're an actor, act. It's work begets work, and study begets work, and perfecting yourself begets work. And I'm a staunch believer in the cliche, the shop-worn, overtrodden cliche that luck is just opportunity meets preparedness, and preparedness meaning opportunity. Do not sit around waiting for a break. Do not be unprepared. The better you are, the better chance you have that something will come to you and click. When Keanu and I were talking about doing this play, and the original idea for this was Keanu's, and he called me and he was like, "What do you think?" We were trying to find something to do together. He was like, "What do you think about trying to do Godot on Broadway?" And I thought to myself, I mean, it's a monster. It's one of the hardest plays in drama. And it was only because I'd been training nonstop for the past 20 years without even wanting to work commercially in acting, just for myself. I'd been doing a ton of acting training, and that I knew I was actually capable of doing it. Otherwise, I'd have been like, "I love you, but that's bananas." There's no way. It says we cannot climb this mountain. It's not climbable. So that was just preparedness meeting opportunity, and I just think that that's what's happened to me over and over again in my career, in much smaller ways, much subtler ways, of just do the damn work on your own, and you will find that place where you are meant to be.
If you enjoyed this episode and you want to support us, get early access and exclusive content, all ad-free, click and join the Life in Film YouTube channel and become a member now. Thank you to our guests Kaya and Alex. Thank you to Alex and the team at Alternate Current. And as always, thank you to our sponsors, movieposters.com and BetterHelp.
Thanks so much for taking the time. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you, Dylan. Have a good day.
Cheers. Bye. Matt, I'm a big fan, so thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you.
It really means a lot.
Great. Thank you so much. I appreciate the chat. All right.
Cheers, man. Take
See
care.
ya. Bye-bye.